Well, let's go back to where it all began. My name is Julie Wilson and I'm 22 years old. That day should have been the proudest moment of my life, graduating summa cum laude with my degree in biomedical engineering. My whole family came to celebrate. Mama, Daddy, my two brothers Ryan and Deshaun, and Uncle Mark who'd driven down in his big SUV to fit us all. The ceremony was beautiful. I walked across that stage knowing I was the first in our family to graduate college. Mama was crying happy tears, Daddy was taking pictures like crazy, and even my brother seemed proud for once. After years of struggle, working 3 jobs to pay for school, living on ramen noodles and hope, I'd finally made it. Uncle Mark suggested we celebrate at this fancy restaurant downtown. "Why treat?" he said, pulling out his wallet. "My niece deserves the best." We had steak, lobster, the works. Uncle Mark kept ordering drinks, talking loud about how successful our family was becoming. I should have paid more attention to how many whiskey sours he was knocking back. The rain started during dessert. Heavy drops pelting the restaurant windows. Daddy suggested we wait it out, but Uncle Mark waved him off. "I've been driving longer than you've been alive, brother. Little rain never hurt nobody." His words were slightly slurred, but we all piled into his SUV anyway. I sat in the back between Ryan and Deshaun, my graduation cap in my lap, diploma tucked safely in my purse. We were all laughing, singing along to old school R&B on the radio. For those precious moments, everything felt perfect. My family was proud of me. My future stretched ahead bright and promising. I had no idea that in 30 minutes, everything would change forever. That the people I trusted most in the world would make a choice that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The highway stretched ahead like a black ribbon in the rain. Uncle Mark was going too fast. I could feel it in my stomach as we took those curves. The speedometer read 70, maybe more. Deshaun was showing me something on his phone when I noticed Uncle Mark's head nodding. "Uncle Mark, you okay?" I called out, but my voice got lost in the music and rain drumming on the roof. Mama turned around. "Julie, baby, tell me more about that internship offer. Johnson & Johnson, right?" She was trying to keep the conversation going, probably sensing what I was sensing. That something wasn't right. "Yeah, Mama, they want me to start in their research division next month." I was excited, but my eyes kept drifting to Uncle Mark's reflection in the rearview mirror. His eyelids looked heavy. "Slow down a little, Mark," Daddy said quietly. "Roads are slick." "I got this, Michael. Don't worry about." That's when I saw it. The curve ahead, sharper than Uncle Mark realized. The SUV was drifting toward the shoulder, toward the massive oak tree that seemed to appear out of nowhere in our headlights. "Uncle Mark!" I screamed. He jerked awake, yanked the wheel hard to the left. Too hard. The SUV fishtailed, hydroplaned on the wet asphalt. Time slowed down like in the movies. I remember thinking, this isn't how it ends. Not today. Not when everything was finally going right. The tree filled the windshield. Ryan grabbed my hand. Deshaun was yelling something I couldn't understand. Mama's scream cut through everything else. Then the world exploded into metal and glass and darkness. The last thing I remember before unconsciousness took me was the strange silence that followed the crash. No more music. No more rain drumming. Just the hiss of the radiator and someone moaning my name. Then nothing. 3 hours later, I clawed my way back to consciousness in complete darkness. My head felt like it was splitting apart. Something warm and sticky was running down my face. Blood. When I tried to move, white-hot pain shot through my ribs and left leg. "Hello." I whispered into the darkness. "Mama? Daddy?" My voice came out as a croak. Silence. The smell hit me then, gasoline, blood, and something else. Something metallic and wrong. I reached around blindly, my fingers finding twisted metal where the roof should have been. The passenger seat was empty. Front seat was empty too. "Ryan? Deshaun?" I called louder, panic rising in my throat like bile. Nothing but the sound of rain dripping through shattered windows. I tried to move again and screamed. My left leg was pinned under what felt like the dashboard. When I reached down to feel it, my fingers came away wet with blood. Broken. Definitely broken. That's when the horrible truth started sinking in. They were gone. All of them. My family had crawled out of this wreckage and left me here. Unconscious. Bleeding. Trapped. "They'll come back," I told myself, trying to fight off the panic. They went to get help. They'll be back with paramedics any minute now. But the rational part of my mind, the part that earned that engineering degree, was already calculating. 3 hours. In weather like this, with injuries like mine, 3 hours was the difference between life and death. My graduation cap was still beside me, soaked in blood and rain. My purse was wedged under twisted metal, everything inside scattered. The diploma I'd worked so hard for was probably ruined. But I was alive. Barely, but alive. I had to stay alive until help came. I had to believe they were coming back for me. Hours crawled by like centuries. The rain turned heavier, pouring through the shattered windshield and broken windows. I was soaked, shivering, fighting to stay conscious. Every breath felt like knives in my chest. Broken ribs for sure. I tried my cell phone, but it was smashed beyond repair. The car was upside down in a ditch, hidden from the road by that massive oak tree. Nobody could see us unless they were really looking. Where are they? I whispered to the darkness. My family should have been back by now with help. Unless, well, I couldn't think about that. They wouldn't leave me. Not my own family. Not Mama, who used to stay up all night when I was sick. Not Daddy, who worked double shifts to help pay for my textbooks. Not my brothers, who annoyed me every day because they loved me. They were coming back. They had to be. But as the night wore on and hypothermia started setting in, darker thoughts crept into my mind. Uncle Mark had been drinking. A lot. If police came, they'd test him for alcohol. His license would be gone. Maybe jail time. And the insurance. Daddy always worried about money, about medical bills we couldn't afford. If I was hurt bad enough to need surgery, ICU care. No, I said out loud, my voice echoing in the twisted metal coffin. They wouldn't. They're not like that. But deep down, in the part of my soul that engineering school had taught to analyze problems logically, I was starting to understand. The pieces were adding up to an equation I didn't want to solve. My family had made a choice. And I wasn't part of it. Dawn was still hours away, but I could feel myself slipping. Blood loss, shock, hypothermia. My body was shutting down. If help didn't come soon, I was going to die in this car. Alone. Just as the gray light of dawn was creeping through the trees, I heard it. The rumble of diesel engine. A truck somewhere up on the highway. I summoned every ounce of strength I had left. Help. I screamed, my voice raw and broken. Help me. The engine sound faded. Kept going. My heart sank. Then I heard brakes squealing. The engine stopped. Footsteps crunching through wet leaves, getting closer. Jesus Christ, a man's voice said. There's somebody in there. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, landing on my face. I'd never been so happy to see light in my life. Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me? The voice belonged to a black man, maybe 50, wearing a trucker cap. My name's Willie Jefferson. I'm gonna get you out of here. Please, I whispered. I've been here hours. Willie was already on his radio calling for ambulances, fire department, police. His voice was calm but urgent. We got a serious MVA out here on Highway 46, about 2 miles south of the Texaco. Young woman trapped in the vehicle, looks like she's been here a while. While we waited for help, Willie climbed partially into the wreckage to check my injuries. His gentle hands found my pulse, assessed the damage. You're gonna be okay, sweetheart. Help's coming. Bye, family, I managed to say. They were in the car too. Willie's flashlight swept through the vehicle, taking in all the evidence. Multiple seats, scattered belongings, blood in different areas. His expression changed. Honey, he said carefully, how long you been alone in here? 6 hours. Maybe more. They went to get help. Willie was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Angry. 6 hours? And nobody came back. That's when it hit me. Really hit me. Willie could see what I'd been trying not to believe. The evidence was right there in that mangled SUV. Signs that 6 people had been in this crash, but only one was left behind. The paramedics had to use the jaws of life to cut me out. My left leg was shattered, 3 ribs broken, severe head trauma. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I heard Willie talking to the police officer. Something ain't right here, Officer Davis. This car's been here all night. Look at the blood patterns. Multiple people were in this wreck. But she's been alone for 6-7 hours. Maybe they went for help and got lost, the cop suggested. Willie shook his head. Nearest phone is 2 miles straight down the highway. Gas stations got lights you can see from here. Nobody gets lost walking there. In the ambulance, floating on morphine and adrenaline, I tried to piece together what happened after I lost consciousness. My family must have been shaken up but not seriously hurt. They'd climbed out, assessed the situation, and made a decision. Uncle Mark was drunk. Daddy was always worried about money. If they called for help and I was critically injured, there would be investigations, insurance claims, medical bills that could bankrupt our family. But if I wasn't in the car when it crashed, if I had stayed at school for the weekend like they'd probably already told people, if this was just a single car accident with everyone safely out, the insurance payout would be clean. Uncle Mark might get a DUI, but no attempted manslaughter charges. Me? I was just a loose end they could deal with later if I survived. Where's my family? I asked the paramedic. He checked her clipboard. Honey, according to the accident report, everyone got out safely. The police were told all occupants were accounted for. My heart stopped. What? Your family reported that everyone exited the vehicle after the crash. They said no one else was inside when they left to get help. Even through the morphine haze, the betrayal hit me like a physical blow. They hadn't just left me, they'd actively lied to prevent rescue teams from looking for me. My own family had written me off for dead. I died in the emergency room. Officially. My heart stopped for 3 minutes and 12 seconds while they were trying to stabilize me for surgery. The monitors went flat, alarms screaming. I was gone. Later, Dr. Hancock would tell me it was blood loss and shock. My body just couldn't handle any more trauma. But I remember what it felt like, floating above the table, watching them work on my broken body, feeling strangely peaceful. I saw a bright light like everyone talks about, warm and welcoming. For a moment, I almost went toward it, almost let go. But something held me back. Anger maybe. Or just pure stubbornness. I wasn't done. Not like this. The crash team got my heart beating again. Barely. I was rushed into surgery where Dr. Sarah Richardson worked for 8 hours to put my leg back together. Metal plates, screws, pins. He saved the leg but just barely. Then came the medically induced coma. My brain was swelling and they needed to give it time to heal. 2 months, they told my family when they finally called the hospital. My family, who had spent the last 14 hours telling everyone I was celebrating with friends and had decided to stay at school for the weekend. The hospital tried to reach my emergency contacts repeatedly. The calls went straight to voicemail. When someone finally answered at my parents' house, the conversation was brief. "Oh my God," Mama said. "We thought she was dead. Where has she been all this time?" The nurse was confused. "Ma'am, your daughter was in the car accident last night. She's been in critical condition." "What car accident?" Nobody told us about any car accident involving Julie. I found out later that my family had already filed the insurance claim. Single vehicle accident, 6 occupants, everyone walked away with minor injuries. Total loss on the SUV. They'd collected $150,000 and divided it up. While I lay dying in the ICU 20 minutes from their house, they were spending blood money. My blood money. 2 months later, I opened my eyes to white ceiling tiles and the steady beep of machines. My throat was raw from the ventilator. My left leg was suspended in a complicated contraption of metal and pulleys. A nurse noticed I was awake and smiled. "Welcome back, honey. You gave us quite a scare." "How long?" My voice was a whisper. 8 weeks. You've been in a medically induced coma. Your brain needed time to heal. 8 weeks. 2 months of my life gone. I tried to move and winced. My body felt foreign, weak. But I was alive. Against all odds, I was alive. Has my family been here? The nurse's expression shifted slightly. "Honey, we had trouble reaching your family at first. They thought, well, there was some confusion about the accident." Dr. Chin came in later that morning to explain my injuries, my prognosis. The leg would heal, but I'd walk with a limp. The head injury had caused some memory issues, but my cognitive function seemed intact. Physical therapy would take months, maybe years. "You're lucky to be alive," she said. "Most people don't survive that level of trauma, especially when rescue is delayed that long." "About that," I said carefully. "The delay. What exactly happened?" Dr. Chin consulted her chart. According to the police report, all occupants were initially believed to have exited the vehicle safely. It wasn't until a passing motorist spotted the wreckage the next morning that anyone knew someone was still trapped inside. And my family? They filed a report stating that everyone had gotten out. That's why the initial rescue teams didn't search the vehicle thoroughly. The pieces were all there, laid out like evidence in a courtroom. My family had made a conscious decision to leave me for dead, then lied to cover it up. The insurance money was just a bonus. I asked for a phone. Time to call home and see what story they'd tell me now. My hands shook as I dialed home. The phone rang 3 times before Mama picked up. Hello. Mama? It's me. It's Julie. Silence. Then, oh my God, Julie. Baby, where have you been? We thought you were dead. We've been so worried. The lie came so easily. So naturally. Like she'd been practicing it for 2 months. Mama, I was in the car accident. With Uncle Mark. I've been in the hospital in a coma. What car accident? Honey, you're not making sense. Uncle Mark's accident was 2 months ago, but you weren't with us. You decided to stay at school, remember? My blood ran cold. She was sticking to the story even now. Even when she knew I was alive and could contradict her. Mama, I graduated that day. We all went to dinner. I was in the back seat between Ryan and Deshawn. You turned around and asked me about the Johnson & Johnson internship. Sweetheart, you must have hit your head or something. You're confused. We celebrated your graduation, but you stayed at school afterward. You called and said you wanted to spend the weekend with friends. The gaslighting was masterful. If I hadn't been there, if I hadn't lived through those 6 hours of hell, I might have believed her. Mama, my graduation cap was in that car. Covered in my blood. Honey, you need to see a doctor. You're talking crazy. That's when I heard Daddy's voice in the background. Who is it, Linda? It's Julie. She's saying some strange things about being in Mark's accident. Let me talk to her. Daddy got on the phone. Julie? Baby girl, where are you? I'm at Memorial Hospital, Daddy. Where I've been for 2 months. In a coma. Because my family left me to die in that car. Now hold on. Nobody left nobody. You weren't in that car, Julie. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it ain't funny. The conviction in his voice was chilling. They'd told this lie so many times they almost believed it themselves. Fine, I said quietly. I'll be in touch. I hung up and cried for the first time since waking up. Not from pain, but from the crushing realization that my family was willing to sacrifice me to save themselves. But I was alive. Against their wishes, despite their betrayal, I was alive. And I was going to make them pay. Willie Jefferson visited me every few days during my recovery. The truck driver who saved my life became my most important witness and eventually something like a surrogate father. I seen a lot of bad things on these roads, he told me one afternoon, but what your family did? That's evil. Pure evil. Willie had kept meticulous records of what he found that morning. Photos he took with his phone before the police arrived. Time stamps. Even recordings of his radio calls for help. He'd suspected something was wrong from the beginning. The blood patterns alone tell the story, he explained, showing me printouts he'd made. 6 people in that car, no doubt about it. But only 1 left behind. Through Willie, I connected with Officer Davis, who'd responded to the scene. He remembered Willie's concerns about the timeline and the abandoned victim. More importantly, he remembered my family's statements about everyone being safely out of the vehicle. I gotta be honest, Officer Davis told me, it didn't sit right with me at the time. But the family was adamant that everyone had exited the vehicle. Dr. Hancock, the ER doctor who'd brought me back from the dead, provided medical records documenting the extent of my injuries and how long I'd been trapped. The trauma patterns were consistent with being pinned in wreckage for hours. Then there was the insurance investigation. My family's claim had been processed quickly, too quickly, according to investigator Janet Torres. Single vehicle accident, all occupants safe, total loss payout of $150,000. But if you were critically injured in that same accident, Janet explained, and they failed to report it, that's insurance fraud. They collected money under false pretenses. The legal case was building itself. Abandonment. Reckless endangerment. Insurance fraud. And if prosecutors wanted to push it, attempted murder. But first, I had to get out of this hospital bed and learn to walk again. Justice would have to wait until I was strong enough to fight for it. The physical therapy was brutal, but every painful step was motivated by rage. They thought I was dead. They profited from my near death. Now they were about to learn what resurrection looks like. 6 months of physical therapy taught me that my body was tougher than my family's love. My left leg would never be the same. The limp was permanent, the pain constant. But I could walk. I could stand. I could fight. Dr. Patricia Williams, my physical therapist, pushed me harder than anyone ever had. "You've got something to prove," she'd say during our sessions. "I can see it in your eyes. Use that anger. Channel it into getting stronger." He was right. Every step on that treadmill was a step toward justice. Every weight I lifted was preparation for the battle ahead. My family thought they'd destroyed me, but they'd only made me harder to kill. During recovery, I'd reached out to legal aid societies, victims' rights groups, anyone who would listen to my story. Most lawyers wanted retainer fees I couldn't afford. But eventually, I found Amelia Brooks, a young attorney who specialized in family trauma cases. "What they did to you," Amelia said after reviewing my files, "it's almost unprecedented. Family members abandoning an injured victim, lying to prevent rescue, then profiting from insurance fraud? I've never seen anything like it. The civil case would be easier to prove than criminal charges. Lower burden of proof, and we had overwhelming evidence. Witness testimony, medical records, insurance documents, police reports. Willie's photographs and recordings were particularly damning. The beautiful thing about civil court," Amelia explained, "is that we can go after their assets directly. The insurance money they stole, their homes, cars, businesses, all of it's fair game if we can prove damages." And the damages were significant. Medical bills approaching $400,000. Lost wages from the biomedical engineering job I'd had to turn down. Pain and suffering. Emotional distress. The lifetime costs of disability. But money wasn't what motivated me. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted them to admit what they'd done. I wanted consequences. "Justice," I told Amelia, "isn't about the money. It's about making sure they can never do this to anyone else." Amelia smiled grimly. "Oh, we'll get justice. And we'll bankrupt them in the process." The lawsuit hit my family like a freight train. Amelia filed on a Tuesday morning. Julie Wilson versus Linda Wilson, Michael Wilson, Ryan Wilson, Deshaun Wilson, and Mark Wilson. Civil action for abandonment, reckless endangerment, insurance fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Damages sought, $2.3 million. My phone started ringing within hours. First Ryan, then Deshaun, finally Mama. "Julie, baby, what are you doing? We're family. We don't sue family. We also don't leave family to die in car wrecks," I replied calmly. But apparently I was wrong about that. "You're being dramatic. We thought you were dead. We made a mistake. You made a choice, Mama. You chose to lie to the police. You chose to collect insurance money. You chose to let me die rather than face consequences." Uncle Mark's criminal trial started first. DUI, insurance fraud, leaving the scene of an accident. Willie testified about finding me abandoned. Officer Davis testified about my family's lies. The evidence was overwhelming. Mark got 3 years in state prison. His lawyer tried to argue that he'd been too drunk to remember I was in the car, but the insurance fraud conviction proved premeditation. He'd been sober enough to coordinate lies with my parents. The civil trial was even more devastating. Amelia had prepared a timeline of events that read like a horror novel. The family dinner, the crash, 6 hours of abandonment, the coordinated deception, 2 months of collecting insurance money while I lay dying. Willie's testimony brought the courtroom to tears. "I found that girl more dead than alive, pinned under metal for hours. And her own family had told everyone she wasn't even there. I've seen car accidents take lives, but I never seen a family choose to let it happen." My parents and brothers sat at the defendant's table, looking like strangers. The people who raised me, who I'd trusted with my life, watching their lies unravel in open court. When I took the stand to testify, the courtroom was dead silent. I told them about waking up in darkness, calling for my family, the horrible realization that I'd been abandoned. About dying on the operating table and coming back, only to discover my family had profited from my near death. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Unanimous verdict, $2.3 million in damages, plus punitive awards that brought the total to nearly $3 million. Justice tastes like vindication. 3 years later, I'm sitting in my home office, reviewing applications for the Julie Wilson Foundation. a nonprofit I started to help abandoned trauma victims access legal representation and medical care. The irony isn't lost on me. My family's insurance money, the money they stole by leaving me for dead, became the seed funding for an organization dedicated to preventing exactly what they did to me. My parents lost their dream retirement home. They're living in a trailer park now, working minimum wage jobs in their 60s because their assets were seized to pay the judgment. Ryan and Deshawn had to drop out of college. Turns out, blood money doesn't last long when you're paying court-ordered restitution. Uncle Mark got out of prison last month and called me, crying, begging for just a little help from family. I listened to his whole sob story. How hard prison was, how he couldn't find work with a felony record, how he was living in his car. Then I said the words I'd been practicing for 3 years. I'm sorry, but I died in that car crash 6 years ago. Remember? You left me there. Willie Jefferson stops by every few weeks. We have coffee, talk about the Foundation's latest cases. Remember that morning when he saved my life? You know what I'm proudest of? He told me last week. Not just that I found you. It's what you did with the life I helped save. You turned that horror into something beautiful. He's right. My limp reminds me daily of what they took from me, but my work reminds me of what they couldn't. My strength, my purpose, my refusal to let their betrayal define me. Sometimes they still call. Birthdays, Christmas, family emergencies. The voices sound older now, broken. They want reconciliation, forgiveness, a relationship with the daughter and sister they threw away. But here's what they never understood. You can't abandon someone and then expect them to be there when you need them. You can't leave someone to die and then demand they help you live. I built this beautiful life from nothing with no family support, using the very money they tried to steal from my corpse. Every day I wake up in my peaceful home, managing a foundation that's helped hundreds of trauma victims. I'm reminded that sometimes the best revenge is simply surviving and thriving despite those who wanted you gone. My name is Julie Wilson. I'm 28 years old. I died in a car crash 6 years ago, but I'm more alive than I've ever been. And that's the truth they'll never be able to change. So what do you think? Was Julie completely in the right, or did she throw away her family over pride? I want to hear every perspective in the comments below. And if you can't get enough of these intense family showdowns, make sure you're subscribed. I've got stories that'll make this one look tame.